Is that on? Can you hear? Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is a treat for lots of reasons, for me, but for you too, because a very close friend, great musician, great guitarist, Patrick Kearney, is here to share some of his music with us. Can I show the slide, the first one? Okay. This is, well, it's part of the United States. You can see Michigan, but you can see over here in Lake Huron, this peninsula, right? That peninsula with the red line through it that goes up into Lake Huron. That's called the Bruce Peninsula, and one of my really good friends runs an international guitar festival there every summer at Sable Beach. That's the name of it, Sable for sand. It's a long sandy beach on the western side of that peninsula, on the south side, and that's where I met Patrick for the first time. Patrick was an artist at this guitar festival. Just to show you a little bit about what this place is like. Second slide. That's why I like to go there. The guitar music is another part of it. Okay, that's it for the slides. That's where I met Patrick. Patrick is from Canada. He lives in Montreal. And when he played his concert, Jeff McFadden, who teaches at the University of Toronto, Jeff McFadden is a doctor of music. He's an incredible guitarist, great musician. His introduction for Patrick Kearney that night was very short. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a real treat. This is a very special friend. I've told you that. Patrick Kearney is one of the greatest guitarists Canada has ever produced." And I sat back and just took in an evening of guitar music that was sensational. Patrick is an incredible player. He does things very easily that most of us find extremely hard. And on top of it, he's a teacher. He teaches in Montreal. Patrick has a professional recording studio. He produces albums, and he does a lot inside of music. He does many things. I think at the core, Patrick is a very fussy guy. He thinks a lot about sound, how sound is produced, how you put it together and pull it apart, and how it is realized on the guitar, which is a very versatile instrument, as you'll see. Without any more verbiage, I give you Patrick Kearney.
Can everybody hear me if I don't use the mic? Yes. All right. Fantastic. So I'll try to project, as I'm sure they teach you in theater class. They don't teach you how to shut off a mic though. I am really, really, really happy to be here for many reasons. The first one being Professor Joe Zippoli. It's reason number one. Reason number two is I've heard wonders about this school vis-a-vis Joe and through Joe as well. And the third reason is there was a Canadian back in the 1950s who actually played on this stage. His name was Glenn Gould. So it's very humbling for me and also very nerve-wracking to be here today on that same stage, being another Canadian. Thank God I don't play piano, so I don't think I can play it like Glenn did. I'm not going to say much about the first piece, except for the fact that it was written by a guitarist-composer. Why that is so interesting in the classical world is you don't see much of them, right? In the past, you've heard of people like Chopin. You've heard of people like Mozart or Liszt. And they're composers who are also performers. The reason you don't see this as much in the classical world as you would, let's say, for instance, in maybe pop music, is the demands of the music, the demands of mastering, whether it be the voice or your instrument, is very demanding. So it leaves very little space to command your instrument and then to also command writing for it. And the classical guitar is one of those instruments that is very capricious. It takes a lot of patience for someone to live with this thing for the decades that I have lived with it so far. It's a working relationship, but we have our ups and downs. So anyway, the first piece is written by Roland Diens. He is a Frenchman who was born in Tunisia, and this piece I'm going to play is actually kind of a joke. It was written out of a dare many years ago. The story goes that he was at a party and playing a lot of his very beautiful, complicated music, and someone at the party just kind of shouted out, "Why don't you play something we can dance to?" So the story is that's where this tango en sky that I'm going to play right now was born. Now, the word en sky, or the phrase en sky, the terminology, I'm not quite sure whether it's Tunisian, French, or French Tunisian, but the expression en sky means fake, but like a fake, as if you would have a couch made out of fake leather and it looks like fake leather. So it's his way of saying, I'm not Argentinian, I'm going to write an Argentinian tango, and it's a joke. So it's a tango en sky, so a fake tango in essence. Unfortunately, Roland Diens passed a couple of years ago, a good friend of mine, and was actually one of the main adjudicators for one of my very important exams that I did in Paris many years ago. And that's where we first met. So playing his music always means a little something special to me. Oops, technical issues. Now, as I hope most of you know, I'll be playing Walker Hall tomorrow night, and I expect all of you there. I'm kidding. But I'm not. I mean, I'm kidding, but I'm not. I know that most of you have an important study schedule and a demanding study schedule, so I don't expect all of you to be there. But this following piece, you'll see part 2 of it if you come tomorrow. And the story as you might have noticed, I like storytelling. And so some things always have a story for me. Whenever I'm working on a new piece, I don't ever play it for someone else until I've worked out my story, until I've figured out what I want to say with this piece of music. The following piece is exactly that. This piece I wrote some years ago. It's called Train to Kuyumbama. Now, Kuyumbama means a lot of things, of which you will hear of tomorrow night at Walker Hall. But one of the things is it's an area in Turkey. So some years ago, my mother approaches me and says, okay, it's going to be your dad's important anniversary. We're getting a lot of people together. Would you mind writing something? And I said, okay, sure, fine. She gave me a whole year to prepare. And 2 weeks before the event, I still had nothing on paper, right? We tend to procrastinate as artists, and that was a strong one for me. I had to, in 2 weeks, come up with this on paper. Now, mind you, I had worked out the ideas in my head. I had draft ideas of what I wanted to do. And one of those things was to get a storyline connected to my dad. And this is what took me a long time. So on a technical level, I had to work out these techniques about perpetual motion. Why? Because the train was very important. Canada is a country that is extremely long and also extremely wide, but nobody lives up north. Or very little people do. We all live on the band that is close to your land. So there are 35 million people, give or take a few million, in this entire country. Right? I mean, that's essentially what the size of New England, right? So we have that stretched over 7,000 kilometers. Think about that for a second. We also have rails that go from one end of the country to the other. So the train experience in Canada is absolutely legendary. If ever you have a chance to live this in any country, but you know, I'm a little biased to my own country, come to Canada. So, the story goes that I'm approaching 16 years of age. My sister, not now I'm a lot older. A lot older. My sister being 2 years younger, and my grandfather being of age where he can kind of still travel with us, my father takes it upon himself to say, this is going to be our last family trip. And I go, okay. Again, I'm approaching 16. I'm going to be 16 in a little bit. And he's announcing this to the family. Next summer, this is what we're going to do. And I go, you're serious? I'm going to spend the whole summer with the family and Grandpa, and we're going to do, like, Canada, the Canadian West in the train? What, are you serious? I got things to do, man. People to see. And he says, no, this is what we're going to do. Before this trip, my father is Canadian, it's of course Canadian, but he is Canadian, Irish, French Canadian. And my grandfather came from Ireland. And my mother's side is La Flamme, is French Canadian. Somewhere in there, it's from France, long time ago. And we also have some Huron blood in the family. So I'm a true mutt, Canadian mutt. So getting back to the train thing, it was very important for him as a father to reunite his family, to bring Grandpa along. And I'm guessing now that I'm a little older, it was a bonding experience he was looking for. Before this, I was raised like he was raised, which was very yes sir, no sir. You know, there was never really any hugging, that kind of thing. It was very, very formal with my father. After this trip, all of that changed. So, in a nutshell, the problem was traveling. My folks wanted to do the Canadian West because we'd done a lot of other parts of Canada, but we had never seen the Canadian West and the prairies. But the grandfather did not want to fly. He had a fear of flying, which is where the train kicks in. So, the way the trip started was he took the train with my mom and my sister. They went to Calgary by train. It's about a 3 days journey. by train. It doesn't really stop. That's how far it is. Once they got to Calgary, my dad and I timed it so that a few days later we would take the plane, land in Calgary, meet up, rent a car, and then for a whole month we're on the road. Driving everywhere, seeing the mountains. But then we had to come back, right? After this massive trip, we had to come back, and Grandpa doesn't like to fly. So my sister said, look, I did the train with Mom on the way there. You're taking it back with Dad. I go, no way. And we weren't leaving from Calgary this time, we were leaving from Vancouver. So if you're familiar with your geography, there's a little bit of a difference there. That adds an entire day and a bit to the train. So I know getting on the train, I'm going to be on this train for 4 days with Grandpa, my dad, in close quarters. Within the first half hour, opened my book, sat down, had a panic attack. The very first panic attack in my life. I don't know whether it was claustrophobia, whether it was the fact that I felt locked into this train for 4 days. I don't know, but I needed a little bit of help. Dad got some attendant in the train, and this attendant showed me the entire train. Amazing, absolutely amazing. I had no idea there were, recreational cars, like a whole car just with games and video games and, card tables, that kind of stuff. Another couple of cars devoted just to dining, different dining cars. And then there's these dome cars, they're called. Those are fantastic. You get a 360-degree view of what's outside. And what's fascinating about these dome cars is during the day you cannot get a seat. But at night, everybody shuts down. I'm 16 years old. I'm living this, time clock biology stuff where I don't want to live during the day, I want to live at night. I call it the vampire hours. So I kind of convinced my dad, I can't really roam around by myself, I'm not legal, of legal age, but would you mind? I wouldn't mind checking out the stars in the dome car. So one night he says, okay, fine, let me get myself a drink, let's go up there. And that's when everything changed. My dad and I ended up talking the first night through the entire night. Never done this before my dad, ever. And something magic happened on the trip back. Ever since then, the relationship between my dad and I has been completely different. Now we're good friends, now there's more hugging, that kind of thing. So, when came time for my dad's anniversary, and I had to find a story, I had to find a reason to be, the train was the one. Now why Kuyumbaba and not train to Calgary or train to Montreal? Because at that time in my life, I was touring with a piece called Kuyumbaba, which you will hear tomorrow night. It's an incredibly special piece, and not to toot my own horn here, this is not me, it's the critics. I am more or less world-renowned for the interpretation of Kuyumbaba. So that's tomorrow night. My piece was written as a preludic homage to Carlo Domenicone's Kuyumbaba, and dedicated to my dad and this whole trip that we had on the train. So you will see all these perpetual motion kind of techniques that I use to better describe the motion of a train, the feeling of a train, the jitteriness. All of these emotions are in there while using just two very simple ideas. I'm using what I call my European motive, which is, and I play on that for many, many, many variations. You'll see it, or hear it, rather. And the other idea is what I call my more Eastern idea. You'll hear that as well. You've noticed I've been tuning. Yes, the guitar is entirely detuned for this piece. The only string that stays the same is my skinny one, my small one. All the other ones are changed. So it's there's a reason to my madness of ranting. Let's hope that the guitar stays in tune. Another thing that is new for me in this piece years ago was I worked up a extended technique, is what we call it in the academic world. Something that I didn't invent, but that wasn't really used, and that is a tremolo thumb. You might not see it, but you'll hear it. I can play my thumb in a tremolo while my fingers do other things. So again, with the whole train idea in mind. So here we go, train to Kuimbaba. if we have time, I'd like to invite Joe up to play.
Get out of this.
So some of you may know, or not, that Joe started playing guitar some years back and had one of the greatest guitarists and professors around, a good friend of mine, Andrew Zone, or Dr. Zone, as he likes to be called. It's not going to take me long to tune. I just got to tune it back, right? Or it should be fine. So, even though Joe might not be a professional guitarist, he actually has his part memorized.
I think.
I, on the other hand, don't. No.
We're going to try to play a Spanish dance by Enrique Granados. It's the second Spanish dance, which is called the Oriental, as in the Arab, D sharp. This thing's in E minor. Enrique Granados was one of the great Spanish composers of the Romantic period. Unfortunately for him, when he came to this country to play and celebrate an opera of his that was being performed in New York City, he was invited to extend his tour and go to the White House and play for President Wilson, which he did. And tragically, on his return trip, his ship was torpedoed in the Atlantic and he drowned with his wife. That's what happened.
Thank you.